So today's advice is to be comfortable not understanding something, not knowing something. And especially in software, this will happen all the time. You are never going to know everything. And I guess in general with, in life, you're not always going to know everything. And it's being comfortable knowing that. And specifically in software, and a trait that most software developers have is this desire to understand everything. And that's a good desire, and don't give up on that. That is what drives most of us, is this real deep desire to simply understand how everything works, take things apart, break them, really know what makes things tick. And as you're starting as a software developer, you won't necessarily know everything. And even as a senior and way up to the best in your career, you will never stop having parts of something you don't know. And that is what stops a lot of young developers progressing. They feel that, right, I want to build, say, an entire website and a chat application like we're doing now. And they'll start off at the bottom and they'll go, right, I want to build the client. So I need to build a mobile app. Well, I don't know how mobile apps work, and I don't know anything about software yet. And as they start in that realm, they feel like they need to go, right, I've got to make a login screen. So I need to understand how password encryption works and where that data is going to go and where it's going to go to the website, and then how exactly did the website get that data? When it comes back, how do I handle that? Where would I store it in a database? Now I've got to learn a database. And what happens is they go too much in depth at the start to try and understand everything in a linear fashion. And it's not about being linear in software. You ultimately need, as a developer at the end of your career, or wherever you are in your career, where you've made a full product, I stick by that you absolutely have to understand every part of your code. You can't have just a library you brought in that you don't know how it works, because that's just a black hole in code that could go wrong at any time. But that's as a complete system, as a final finished marketing sellable product. It's not as the part where you are starting off and you're prototyping, you're developing. And the point what I'm trying to get to is that, say especially for beginners, you've got to be comfortable realizing that you're not going to know everything, but you also need to progress forward to making something functional with pieces of code that you don't fully understand in order to get that far and see something happening. So if you want to understand how a login page works or how a chat application works, and you want to build it yourself, you can't know everything all the way along through the steps and then make it at the end. What you've got to do is you've got to rely on help from others, code from others, and pull these blocks in and understand what the blocks are meant to do. So you could pull in a library that helps you query websites and send off JSON messages to servers and return them back and convert them. And you can understand that that's what it does, and all you have to do is type one line of code. But you don't have to, at that stage, worry too much about exactly how that works, because then you'll get bogged down in detail. The same as if you want to save that data on the phone to a database. Now, you could simply make use of a library at that point that does it all for you, and all you have to do is say library.savemydata, library.getmydata. You understand where it's going to go and what's going to happen to it, and that's the important part. And now you can progress through your application and build it up. Get it fully functional so that you can now see a fully working login screen. You can maybe log into a website, do some things. Then you can step backwards and start tackling those areas that now fully work, so you have a working product, but you don't fully understand. And now you can dig deep into those areas. And that's where you'll find your learning. So the biggest problem I find, myself personally, in understanding something, the hardest part, let's say I build some hardware board and it doesn't work, and it's a brand new board that no one's ever built before. That is the hardest part of anything. You've started with an unknown product, with an unknown behavior, with a fault that you don't know. You basically have no working thing to base your assessments off. What makes it really easy is to first just do whatever you need to do, change whatever code you need to change, rewire stuff, mess with things to make stuff work. Once you have something working, you can then do cause and effect, and you can see a working product, and then you can break things and see the effect. And that's where you can really start to get your understanding from. The same again with cars. I mess with mechanics and cars quite a lot, and if I want to fix an engine, having a working engine to base my assessments off, it makes it almost child's play. It's so easy to fix and diagnose if you have something working. So in the same way in software, if you can get your application up and running and push to an Android device, say, and you've now got an Android app on a phone, you can now start messing with things in code that prevent it building, prevent it pushing to the device, that make it crash. But you can always revert those changes to get it back working, and you now know the cause and effect of making those changes, and that's what will progress the learning. So trying to learn something from the very start with nothing already made and trying to learn every single step in detail is a bit of a wasted time and a lot slower learning. So you really need to be comfortable at the start, and like I say, really, to be honest, throughout your career, there are going to be stages where you go, I don't fully understand this bit, but I really want to get the product built so I can see it working, and then I will go back and I'll understand this block. And that's really the advice there. But it's also just as important that once you have a working product, the whole point of doing the software and skipping that bit was to allow you to come back and learn from it, and to understand it when you're ready and when you can make better assessments of that to learn.